Hello everyone, you are listening to The Play Pouch. My name is Nick, otherwise known as Tequila316. Welcome back everyone. I'm joined by my excellent co-host, young Peter. How are you doing
Hello.
today, Pete?
All good, mate.
And today, as you can see by the thumbnail, we're talking about the Mass Effect 4,
Yeah,
maybe? Mass Effect 4?
it's
Little
clearly
teaser kind of,
something.
yeah,
Yeah,
little teaser trailer we saw from N7 Day, which was yesterday. If you don't know, N7 Day is like the day of appreciation for the old Mass Effect trilogy games, and I suppose we have to include Andromeda in that as well. So the four Mass Effect games, I suppose. And yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to play you the trailer in case you haven't seen it, and then we're going to discuss what we think it means and just the Mass Effect series in general and where it can go and stuff like that. So yeah, watch the
yes.
video.
All right, so here's the video. 3, 2, 1, go.
Right. So, what are our initial thoughts on that, Pete? You've seen the lady, which is what it certainly looks like, turning around, looking at the camera in her shiny N7 armor. So
Uh,
Mass Effect 4, or is it just a little bit of a jerking
I
our
think,
chain a bit?
may I start by saying I think that's probably a little bit misogynist of you. It could be a man. Let's just carry on. Let's not even go there. It's a female, clearly in some sort of long coat. Sort of like it's semi. Looks like it's semi armor
Yeah.
and with a sort of a long sort of Matrix style coat with some N7 branding on it, just to let us know that it's to do with Mass Effect. I guess. Okay, well, she's coming down the corridor. We're
Yeah.
focusing on her feet, and the camera goes up. Blah 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 blah. It kind of looks like she's in some space station as opposed to being on a ship. I
Yeah.
could be wrong.
No, it looks that way.
So yeah, the camera sort of blurs out so that we can't see anything as she walks away. I guess the big question is on everyone's lips is this Mass Effect Andromeda 2, or is it the brand new trilogy as we've been hinted at in recent times?
Yeah, I think if you do look around the internet or you go on Reddit and stuff like that, I think the insinuation is that people seem to think it is more likely Mass Effect 4
Yeah.
due to them more or less scrapping. Because if you remember about Andromeda, there was planned DLC for it, but Andromeda did so badly they didn't even bother making the single player DLC.
Mm.
So if they're not prepared to even make a DLC, they're probably given up on the whole planned trilogy of the Mass Effect Andromeda with the Ryder character who everybody hated. Little bit of background, I suppose, very quickly about the Mass Effect series. I've played them all. I loved them all, other than Andromeda, which I thought was okay. Now, Pete, you saw things a little different, didn't you?
Yeah, I played all three of the original. Absolutely fantastic. Loved every single minuscule element of it, every
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah.
Then Andromeda rolls around, and I hated it. Now, that's what I felt at the time. Since I kind of, I'm starting to agree with you in that it was the story that sucked, not necessarily the mechanics or the gameplay loop.
My first rebuttal to that would be, is your face tired? That's the first thing I'd ask.
Cute other Joe, sort of like
Yeah,
going,
cute every meme ever made, and
yeah,
those
yeah,
wonderful goggles. I've got to get a pair of those eye goggle things he's got, bruv, just for a laugh.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the gameplay I thought was the best of the series, and that's the kind of strange thing is that the gameplay just was much better. That everything kind of flowed much more seamlessly and everything like that. The game was much more fun to play from an action RPG kind of way, probably than see. A lot of people think that Mass Effect 2 was the kind of pinnacle of the series gameplay wise, and I don't agree with that. I do actually think
Mm.
that Andromeda was the most fun to play.
Well, I
The
think it's an evolved mechanics, isn't it? Because they've
100%.
obviously
Yeah,
copied and pasted from the previous ones, and
yeah,
it refined it a little bit. So yeah, I kind of agree there.
yeah. The first Mass Effect was much more heavily reliant on the RPG systems and reminded me a lot more of the old Knights of the Old Republic system and the way that worked. And then number two came out and they streamlined it a bit, and they did. There was less skills in the game. There was less RPG mechanics. And then number three, they went a little bit back towards the RPG. So Mass Effect Two, gameplay wise, was the most action of the games. Then, in my opinion, anyway, Mass Effect Three went a bit more on the RPG, and Andromeda, like I think actually might actually have the best blend of both because there was a lot of skills and a lot of abilities. You could create a bunch of different builds, so you could be like a vanguard build where you rush in there and use swords and stuff like that, or you or
Yeah.
melee character, or you could be like a sniper. So you know what I mean? They added a lot more, and maybe some of that was to do with because they started focusing a lot more on multiplayer to mix results. Because we played a bit of it, didn't we? We played some of the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer and then the Andromeda multiplayer.
I could, you know what? I kind of enjoyed the multiplayer.
It wasn't bad, was it?
No, yeah, I mean, like it was. There weren't many maps, but
No.
I mean, it was a good start, and yeah, I kind of enjoyed it. Yeah,
Yeah, and there was a bunch of different characters to play, and you know different types of characters. I mean, you had like your mechanics who had all these special abilities to like drop shield and stuff like that. You
yeah.
had the kind of Jedi, let's call it what it was, the kind of Jedi influenced. You remember I used to love grabbing guys and making you guys laugh by throwing them into. Do you remember I used to grab guys and throw them into the air and just watch them just like leave the whole map and stuff like
Oh,
that?
yeah. We used to do like scream sound effects, didn't we? As
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. So the gameplay, I think actually got better. Um, so Andromeda, for all its flaws, of which there's lots, gameplay wise, it got better. Whereas the story is probably, I do agree with the people who say that probably the story wise, Mass Effect 2 was probably the best of the bunch because you had the whole suicide mission at the end. Do you remember all that stuff?
yeah, yeah.
It
That
was
was
good.
a
It was good.
great mechanic. You know.
It was good stuff,
Yeah,
and the people who survived was literally based upon how much effort you went in you
yeah.
put in. Like if you did their missions and stuff like that, then the chance of their survival was much higher. If you didn't really care about them, then chances are they would die.
Bye,
Mm.
Jack.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our little history on the Mass Effect series. So this trailer, and I do have to use the term trailer loosely because if that was the first kind of official kind of trailer for Mass Effect 4, if it's many years away, Pete, because we know that the Dragon Age is next up and they're having all sorts of problems making that. So you could be talking 5 years.
It could be. It could be. I mean, Dragon Age has been in development for a very long time. They've got to be nearing the end of it now. I have a funny feeling that they were probably developing this new Mass Effect title for a while, probably since Andromeda's fall. Um, it would be probably a little bit. Uh, well, I don't know. I think it's probably safe to say that Bioware have done some extensive hiring since Andromeda, because they did
Yeah.
fix fix some of the facial animations and stuff, didn't they? Really, with Andromeda, it was the facial animations, and it was like,
What about the woman who when she's sliding off the couch? Do you not remember how funny that was when she was leaning? Do you not remember this when she's on the couch and she's leaning to
yeah,
the side and then she
yeah,
like nearly
it was dire. It was
yeah.
dire, and she looked like a pleb. Let's face it. I mean, Eh, look, I mean, like we said this before, you have characters look like they won. That shouldn't be a factor, but it's the facial animations that these guys need to get right. So
Yeah.
I think it's always been for me the facial animations and then the story second, which in terms of badness, severity.
I mean,
So
Anthem, which was their game after Andromeda,
mm,
they almost went in too hard on the facial animations because they were criticized so heavily.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, they got the animations right in Anthem, but like maybe at the expense of everything else. But that's another podcast.
Yeah,
So, but they did obviously prove that okay, we can actually do these phases because Anthem did have much better faces. And the combat in Anthem, as we have discussed before, was very much carbon copy of Andromeda, which was the best part of Anthem, which was the combat.
yeah.
So you have to assume that most likely they'll be carrying that. I'd imagine they will be carrying that combat system into their Mass Effect 4 game. Whether or not that they copy and paste it over and use it in the next Dragon Age game, we don't know. They very well could do that very simply. Turn all the abilities that will just become spells and stuff like that to be adapted for the Dragon Age game.
Don't forget that this new Mass Effect title, it is being developed in the Unreal Engine.
So have they ditched Frostbite then?
Yeah, yeah. I did
Right.
remember reading some news somewhere that they're now developing in an Unreal, and that brings the metahuman, which
Mm,
is probably the most cutting edge character design system for a game engine to date. And we've seen, I mean, I sent you a video
yeah.
of
Yeah.
Andy Serkis doing a Shakespeare piece with
Yep.
the metahuman. And it,
Very
it
good. Very good. Yeah. Very good.
yeah, absolutely stunning. This is running in real time. It looks like a cinematic, but it's real time. And this, is partly why I'm so excited for this new Mass Effect title, because they're going to be using metahumans, and their facial capture technology is just so superior at this stage. And it's also streamlined, and as I've spoken before about the development time is going to be drastically cut because there's so many things like with nanite that does most of the job for you.
Yeah.
So, nanite and lumen. So with all of this considered, it's going to just drastically decrease their development time for it.
Well, I remember after Mass Effect Andromeda came out, and obviously it was analysed to death, and then there were several reports about well, why was this so bad, and there was lots of reports about them having to be rushed and stuff like that. They were rushed to release it, and there was also a big part of it saying that they struggled to adapt the Frostbite engine for the RPG. That was a big hurdling point for them was to actually use the Frostbite engine
Yeah.
to make the game. So if that's out the window now, then maybe, and I have to use the term maybe the chances of another Andromeda are a bit reduced because maybe they've got a better engine now to work with. Now that shouldn't affect the story, and that's which was maybe the biggest criticism, other than obviously the facial animations of Andromeda, is that most people, a friend of ours, Alan, who has appeared on a show, he liked the Mass Effect series, but I remember him. He started playing Andromeda the same time as me, and whereas with me, I didn't think the story was amazing, but I could live with it. I remember him more or less giving up after a couple of hours and saying to me, "This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like a Mass Effect game," and he never really went back.
Mm.
How far did you get on Andromeda? I know this isn't an Andromeda podcast. We can probably do a separate one, but how long did you last before you were like, you know what, nah, not for me?
I'm trying to remember. I think I got quite far, if not completed it.
Did you actually complete it? Okay.
I might have done. Honestly, I genuinely can't remember. But I think the reason why I did actually get so far is because the mechanics were okay, and I was just ignoring the story, and I was really
Yeah.
disappointed that I wasn't sucked in as I would normally have been with previous title. The
Which is terrible considering the quality of the original trilogy. To come and say that it didn't engross you
Yeah,
when the original trilogy did such a good job of getting you invested. Yeah, it's a shame.
it is a shame. I mean, looking back on it now, it's just I feel sad for it. It's just like they had a whole brand new fucking universe to
No,
play
mate,
with.
mate, the amount of scope and freedom that they could have done
Yeah,
almost anything with that lore and the story that they had with going to a new galaxy, mate. They could have done anything.
but no, they have some generic fucking enemy types, and
Yeah,
I think there was only like two types of enemy or something like that.
yeah. There's some robot. I forget. See, man, I mean, it didn't leave a lasting impression on me because I can't remember the name of them. But there was a robot, kind of ancient race, and
Yeah,
they were mainly robots. And then there was again, I can't remember the races. That's how much of an imprint there was. A bad guy race who was trying to kill everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, so Andromeda, we can cover that properly and in depth another time. So, assuming that again, this trailer is Mass Effect 4, which there's still no confirmation because it didn't say Mass Effect 4 coming XXX or even say Mass Effect 4. It didn't even say that.
It was a proper cock tease,
It was a
and
tease, 100%,
it was an attempt to get people talking, which we are. I
which
mean,
we
we're
are.
talking
So,
about. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, if that was their idea, then it's worked. So, assuming it is Mass Effect 4, do you want from it? What improvements would you make, even from the original series? Because the original, nothing's perfect. Even the original series had its issues. What is it that they really could do for Mass Effect 4 to make it like a pre-order? What
Well,
would they have to do to you?
my really the gripes that I had with the original trilogy was the fact that it was limited in terms of area size. So I would like to see, if the Citadel that we used to go
Mm,
back to, I want that to be huge.
yeah.
Just want it to be a huge fucking map. It's fine if you want to give us loading screens to go down to planets, I feel, but you have to do it in a certain way. And it's like, allow us to, I mean, give us an FMV of us going into the planet in real time, right? And if we want to skip that, we can hold X or whatever. But give us that function so we can feel like we're actually traveling.
So
Don't,
would you have that kind of hide the load screens? Then that's the way of hiding the load screens is by playing the kind of FMV from.
yeah,
Okay, okay.
that's what Starfield should have done, and we've spoken about this in depth. But so like things like that. But please just make the areas huge, and fill it with interesting stuff. So if it's on planet things, then have settlements, have like old relic, ancient buildings that you have to unravel the mystery of if it's to do with a certain alien race, and you have to make the alien races unique and interesting. You've got to give us at least 6 to 10 alien races, um, uh, maybe like half of which are aren't races that we come across initially, but we
So
hear about them.
you'd keep the original races. There is like 7 or 8 at least, I think, in the Mass Effect series. Quite.
Yeah,
So
I'd
you'd add another 5 or so onto it.
I'd keep them and then add another bunch. Yeah, another sort of half dozen or so.
And
But like, keep them a
th-
mystery for now as
yeah,
well.
and how would you handle? You wouldn't want the whole procedurally generated stuff, would you? Would you want them to include that stuff, or would you say no? Everything's got to be handcrafted, even though you're probably going to get not as many planets. Would you say okay, give us 10 planets with lots of stuff on, or do the Starfield procedurally generated stuff where it's most of it is randomized stuff like that? Which direction do you think they should go in?
Well, when you're talking about procedural sort of generation stuff, it depends what level it's on.
Yeah,
You can have like a world where it is handcrafted, but you're procedurally generating the foliage and the fauna and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of structure and buildings and architecture, that's got to be unique. So, you can cut corners with having procedural fauna and trees and whatever. But when it comes to actual sets, and surroundings in terms of buildings and stuff, that has to be unique. I mean, make it sort of, what's the word, like sort of Lego, where you can piece certain things together and then use decals to sort of make
yeah.
everything different. That's fine. What I think explorers want is to be able to travel quite far to somewhere else and find something that's of a completely different structure, completely different style. This is why I fell in love with Morrowind so much, is that you traveled to a different town and the town looks physically different in terms of layout and style and stuff like that. And I think that's what people want. And that has to travel to things like the alien races. Some are friendly, some aren't. Some are a complete mystery that have lived a long time ago and then sort of turn up in a sequel somewhere, like, something like that. you have to interest us. You have to give us hooks to be drawn into the game, and that can be done with things like romance options,
Mm.
and solving mysteries as well. So
And
that would be it for me.
yeah, and what about do they keep Shepard? This is a tough one because it did feel like his story was finished after the third game, and you do think, well, where else can they go with him?
Yeah.
But one, and again, another reason why people didn't like Andromeda was there was no Shepard. Now, granted, if they would have done a better job with the Ryder character to make up for not having Shepard, maybe that would have been a much reduced, because it would have been like, okay, he's not Shepard, but he's still pretty good in his own right, or her right. But the
Mm,
truth was, the Ryder character generally was not. I actually didn't think they were terrible, but it wasn't anywhere near as good as Shepard.
yeah.
So with this Mass Effect 4, do they go back to Shepard? They're not going to do Ryder, right? So, but do they go back to Shepard, or do you think, hold on, he's done everything kind of there is to do? Really, you got to close that chapter, right? He's a legendary character. I guess you could have an older version of him, though that brings about its own problems. But because obviously there are so many, this is the problem. There's so many different endings
Yeah.
to the Mass Effect 3, right? Most of which he ends up dying in some form. There's one where he lives. Most of them involve him dying. So
Mm,
that is a difficult thing. So they're gonna have to choose an option, and that option will have to be canon, which also might piss off other people because it's like, well, no, I didn't choose that option. So why
yeah.
is he alive?
Easily solvable.
Okay
Easily
then.
solvable. Okay. Here's how you do it.
Okay.
He's in the game. You can't play him, but depending on what you did in Mass Effect 3. So if you've got a Mass Effect 3 save file on your console, it will read that, and it will adapt the game to what you chose. So if he died, then there'll be a monument to him somewhere, and then you can, maybe there's a side quest where you can read
Mm,
up about what he did and why he's considered to be so famous a person, right? If he survived, then maybe you have a chance to go see him or whatever.
yeah.
But I don't think you should be able to play him, but I definitely feel like he needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think I agree with you 100% on that. Like they did a little bit of when your story continued from Mass Effect 1 to 2, whereas at the beginning of 2 it did read your save file, or if you were brand new in and Mass Effect 2 was your starting point. I remember that there's you're on the ship after being woken up after you die.
Hmm.
They resurrect you, and I think it's Miranda and Jacob, I think, and they're questioning, they're asking you questions, and basically, is that's the equivalent of you deciding what Shepard did in the first game, and then the game going ahead with those decisions. That's if you came into it blind.
If they're smart, then they will take that idea and run with it. So they'll take the whole previous save and look at all of it, maybe even the whole original trilogy if you've got them, and say,
Yeah,
right, okay, so they did this, they did that, they saved the spider race, they did this, whatever, and then they'll have that as a continuation. So maybe you come across the spider race again, and whether they're hostile or friendly is determined on what decisions
and
you
what
make.
Shepard did in the original games. Yeah, no,
Now, the
it's
way
in.
you can get around that
Yeah,
by at the beginning of the game during character creation, you can build a previous save. So you can sort of go through a list of choices
yeah,
of things that you did. Maybe watch a sort of um, what do they call those things previously on
yeah,
Mass
yeah,
Effect.
yeah, yeah.
You watch like a sort of a 10-minute thing like that, and then you just answer some questions if you don't have the save file. I mean, and then just play the game.
What they did is with Dragon Age Inquisition. I remember this because I actually took part in it because I played Dragon Age Origins, the first Dragon Age. I did not play the second one because I heard it was really bad. So I never played the second game, and then I did go back for Inquisition, and there was a website and everything where you could literally do similar to what you just said. There was a website, and then you put what the you could put what you did in the first game, which you played, and in the second game is kind of like you can kind of decide what you would have done, and then it formed a save file, and then that save file you could use for Inquisition, which is what they did.
Nice, yeah, nice idea. They
So
can do it as well.
and that was a while ago. So I'm sure that technology has got even better with that. So they could do something like that where you technically build your backstory and then put it into the game.
It would
Um,
completely freak out the fan base. They would absolutely love it. They would sing BioWare's praises for doing something like that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that was the prime Bioware. The Mass Effect series really was the prime Bioware that everybody really knows them for. So to have any kind of a link to that, I think would do well. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm with you for most of what you said. With the procedurally generated stuff, it is a difficult one because they'll give you a vehicle because they always have. So they'll give you a Mako version. So that means that you won't be running on the planets doing nothing for 5 minutes in between places. So that I guess reduces that.
I mean, you can if you want. That's the
Yeah,
point, isn't it? It's to give
and it's
people as much choice as possible.
and and they probably will have to decide a little bit like Starfield did. Like, are they going to go for the more exploration stuff, or are they going to go more into the RPG stuff? See, with Mass Effect, I always felt it was more of an RPG, and it never really tried to do the exploration stuff.
Mm.
Whether or not they continue on that route remains to be seen, because Mass Effect is a different world to the Starfield stuff. Because Mass Effect, you come into a place where there's already alien races, right? That mystery is kind of lessened because there already is a galactic council, there already is a galactic hub where these races have already interacted. Whereas in Starfield, which is obviously such a good example now, there's no aliens barring the creatures you find on the planet,
Yeah.
right? There's no intelligent life per se um, that you've come across, and that's where the starting point is in Starfield. So it's a different kind of starting point in Mass Effect. In Mass Effect, you're coming into it where there is already a lot of established aliens and alliances and stuff like that. Um, Mass Effect 4, one more question on it, I think. Pete,
Hmm.
would you make it a prequel?
Ooh, good
Because
question. No,
we've just discussed that in Mass Effect you're starting at a point later in the timeline where lots of things have already been established. In would you take it back to maybe we've only just discovered the mass relay in the Earth system and
nah, nah. Make it a sequel. I think.
a sequel?
Yeah, I mean, like, because if you make it a prequel, you have certain limitations.
The prequel gets around the whole Shepard thing, though, doesn't it?
It does, but I think it's time to move on and move away from Shepard. Have him as some sort of iconic historical figure, and move on. You can even have the Ryder twins to sort of like as a sort of like a side thing, and you can
Yeah, and you
take the
press the red button to make the ship explode. Everybody's hitting that red button, bro.
yeah. I mean, like you can have a sort of like you find out what they were up to since, and then maybe they were in trouble, and you can choose to save them or not. I don't know. But yeah, I do think we need to move on from all of that kind of thing. And they can do this really well. They can really do it well. I mean, even the Unreal Engine has its own limitations. There's
Yeah,
some apparently there's some optimizational issues, but from what I've heard, the CD Projekt Red team is incorporating their Red engine into the Unreal Engine. So future updates of the Unreal Engine will incorporate the Red engine and the benefits of the Red engine, specifically multi-thread performance optimizations and stuff like that. So, um, there's the Unreal Engine is looking good, really good. So, if Mass Effect is being developed on it, then I'm actually really optimistic about what happens. And I'm on top of all that, BioWare really does need a winner in terms of Mass
you're
Effect,
not
don't
kidding.
they? Yeah, so they are going to go all out on it, surely.
Well, for me, for the improvements, I think that I'd like in the Mass Effect 4 game. Like I say, I think the gameplay was solid. I don't think they really need to screw around with that much. Or could they can involve it a little bit more? But I think overall, it was in a good place. I think most of their time needs to go on their writing, their story,
Yeah,
and a big thing that maybe I would certainly mention for me is that Mass Effect's trilogy was all about the characters. There was very few characters in the Mass Effect trilogy, not including Andromeda, that I didn't like. Maybe one or two I didn't like. The majority of them I liked. They were well established, well fleshed out. Their motivations generally made sense to me, stuff like that. And in Andromeda, I'm struggling to think of one character I felt that way about.
same. I mean, like we take the piss out of Jack, right? But even she had an
She
interesting
was,
story.
yep. She, you know what, Jack? If Jack was in an Andromeda, should certainly be one of the better characters if they put her in
She'd be a
Andromeda.
part of the team. I mean, like she's
Yeah,
hardcore. It's like you know, yeah. I mean, basically, there was a lack of talent with Andromeda. There wasn't any decent writers. There
no,
wasn't any decent developers because all the good ones had been alienated and pushed out. So, you know, they've got a lot of work to do, of course, but it just pay over the odds for a decent fucking writer like Hampton Francher, or you know, the guy that did you know, Ridley Scott's stuff. You know,
yeah.
who knows? Just get someone professional. And
That's where they need to put their resources, right? They need to put a lot of their budget into doing that stuff rather than focusing on the combat stuff. Because I think that, like I say, that was already in a decent
that's
place for me.
nailed. They've
Yeah,
got the combat nailed. But they need to focus on storyline flow, getting those hooks in for us to keep us engrossed and involved, and that's it.
mate.
That really is it.
I mean Andromeda, right? One of the big things that I enjoyed in the Mass Effect series is I enjoyed obviously the romance stuff. I'm playing through Mass Effect Andromeda, and it's like I don't really like any of these women.
No, they're all dicks.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't really, and I don't really find. So it's like okay, I guess I'll romance one. I think I chose the Cora chick. I thought, all right, then, all right, I'll go with her. She seems like I guess the best of a bunch. You know, I mean, who was the other option? The female Turian. Well, I can't remember her name.
I,
I mean,
I can't remember.
uh, uh, and then we did our top five female characters a couple of weeks ago, and I had Liara in there at number three because she was great. And the Asari in this game, called ZB, I think she's called, and she's incredibly unlikable. And it's just like, this is your Liara replacement. This is the Asari you're giving us for
it's
Ryder.
I don't want
God,
to bring this up, but it's all driven by the new ideology of inclusion and you know, I don't want to go as far as wokeism, but
yeah,
they're trying to be as diverse as possible, and I think that's where a lot of it fell apart because us as gamers, we just want an honest, real story. We don't want like something that's forced upon us, like some current cultural ideology. We want a story, you know, a genuine story. We don't care whether there isn't any powerful females or whether it's all powerful females. It's down to
just
how
want.
good the fucking story is.
Mate, I just want good character. I just want good characters. That's it. Fleshed out characters who understand their motivations,
Yeah,
and the fact that I can barely remember the names of them.
isn't good, is it?
No, I can remember more or less all the characters that your squad mates in the free Mass Effect games. I can remember nearly all of them. I can't. Cora, uh, the female Tyrion.
Yeah.
I think there's a Krogan. I think there's like an old Krogan in there. I mean, that's it, and that really says it all. The fact that you can't remember. Um,
They're all
uh,
Muppets.
there are anything last things to add, Pete? With Mass Effect 4 maybe coming out, maybe this trailer, maybe.
You know, just be mature about it. Don't try to appeal to as many audience types as possible. Go for the throat. Go for the mature gamers. Make it gory. I want huge set pieces, like you know the Citadel area or whatever that's going to be for this game.
Yeah,
I want it to be huge, and I want there to be a fuck ton of side quests on it. But I also want a decent amount of planets for us to explore. Not loads, maybe a dozen. It doesn't have to be more than that.
yeah,
But give us more planets that we can't land on. Make an excuse. Make you know get they're gas giants or
yep,
you know like highly radioactive. Like
yep.
even our suits can't you know deal with whatever. But give us that
It's science fiction,
opportunity.
Pete. It's
Yeah,
science fiction, Pete. They can make up a lot of things.
exactly, exactly. But give us some other areas to explore as well. And that's it really. But get the storyline has to be engaging as it was in the original
Yeah,
trilogy. I don't really specifically want a world catastrophe like some big baddie coming along to destroy the world. Maybe something that's a little bit more subtle to start with, but is engaging. It can be done. You know, there's films like Blade Runner and God, there's too many to mention that doesn't involve world-threatening catastrophes, but is really fucking good.
Yeah, but you got to remember, like, if it's going to be a new trilogy, which again, assumptions,
Yeah,
then as in most trilogies, if there is a big bad, it's only teased in the first chapter, Pete. It's normally teased. You tease something for much later on. It's
yeah, yeah,
teased.
you flick that sex organ mercilessly with teasing, and yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine. But just make it engaging. Make it so that we cannot fucking wait for the next part.
yeah.
That's how you do it.
100%. And like I said, for me, it's mainly about the characters, including the main character, because as we know, they did drop the ball with Ryder. So you need an engrossing main character, and his support characters need to be engrossing, as well as the villain also needs to be engrossing. The villain was rubbish in Andromeda as well.
Yeah,
So you
and
need you need all of it.
let's not have cliches. Let's not have like a scene where it's like we're not so different, you and I, all that kind of. But come on, man, right? And this is why you need a talented writer to come up with stuff that is truly original. Granted, there isn't much space for originality anymore,
A
but
lot's been used up. A lot of things has been already used. It is hard. It is getting harder.
yeah. But as you said, science fiction
Yeah.
is a whole wealth of play area is so huge.
Get away with
So
nearly everything, bro.
yeah. So
Okay, well, there we are. I think that's it, folks. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell, and all those great things. It really does
ding ding
help,
ding.
especially since we are a newish channel and we want to grow. So we would appreciate it. And leave any comments about what you think of the Mass Effect series, and also if it is Mass Effect 4, and it's still if it is. What would you do? Would you prequel it? Would you sequel it? Shepherd or no Shepherd? All those great things. Please
Would you
let us know.
would you pre-order it?
Would you pre-order it? Oh God, we know
Yeah.
I hate pre-ordering stuff, but if they give me a great Mass Effect game, Pete, I might have to cave. I'll be honest
Yeah,
with you.
yeah, no, same here, man.
I might have to
But
cave.
we really do want your opinions, so please do make a comment, and we'll get back to you.
Okay then. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Take care.